How did the Roman Empire turn its wounded soldiers into a secret weapon of espionage? These men, who were supposed to be discarded by war, became Rome's eyes and ears in the most dangerous regions. In ancient Rome, war was unforgiving. Thousands of soldiers returned from the battlefield with scars that rendered them useless for combat. But instead of being forgotten, many of them found a new purpose: infiltrating conquered territories, spying on enemies, and providing vital information that could decide the fate of empires. This practice, both ingenious and risky, showed that even those seemingly defeated could become key pieces on the Roman power board. This isn't just a story of military strategy, it's a story of resilience. Imagine losing everything on the battlefield: your strength, your position, your dignity. Now, imagine turning that defeat into an opportunity to serve once more, this time in the shadows. These men carried more than physical scars. They bore the responsibility of protecting Rome using intelligence, cunning, and courage. But how did Rome train these soldiers for espionage? What were the most dangerous missions they faced? And how did the information they brought shape the decisions of Roman generals and even the Senate? You'll be surprised to learn how these men redefined the meaning of loyalty and duty. Today's video delves into the Roman espionage system, exploring how invalid soldiers played a crucial role in conquered regions. We'll look at the methods they used, the challenges they faced, and how Rome's trust in their skills shaped the outcome of military campaigns. If you're fascinated by stories of courage, strategy, and the hidden gears of the greatest empire in history, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more fascinating tales from the shadows of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was a colossus built on war, where countless soldiers faced the grim inevitability of injury or incapacitation. When their bodies were no longer fit for the front lines, many assumed these men were cast aside, forgotten by an empire focused on expansion. However, Rome saw potential where others saw failure. These injured soldiers were repurposed as shadow operatives, spies sent into conquered territories to gather critical intelligence. It was a bold strategy that turned physical limitations into an unexpected strength, reshaping the role of the invalid soldier. Training these wounded veterans was a calculated move. Rome capitalized on their knowledge of battle tactics and terrain, enhancing these skills with lessons in subtlety, disguise, and infiltration. These men were already accustomed to discipline, and their understanding of survival made them uniquely suited to dangerous missions. Their physical scars often provided them with credible cover stories when entering enemy lands, posing as merchants, travelers, or even refugees. This pivot from warrior to covert operative added a layer of strategy to Rome's military machine that often tipped the scales of power. Their assignments were far from simple. These agents were deployed to regions where Roman control was tenuous, and rebellion simmered beneath the surface. They were tasked with blending in, gaining the trust of locals, and uncovering plots that could threaten Roman dominance. While they no longer wielded swords, the information they brought back was a weapon in its own right. But how did these men reconcile their new roles with their former identity as proud warriors? This transformation raises fascinating questions about identity and purpose. How did soldiers trained for the glory of open combat adapt to a life lived in the shadows? Could they maintain loyalty to Rome while immersing themselves in the lives and cultures of potential enemies? These contradictions provide a glimpse into the psychological complexity of espionage in the ancient world, leading us into the dual lives these operatives were forced to navigate. Becoming a spy required more than physical adaptation. It demanded a mental shift that many soldiers found profoundly unsettling. These men, once celebrated for their bravery on the battlefield, now had to embrace deception as their primary tool. While valor in combat was clear-cut, the moral ambiguity of espionage blurred the lines between right and wrong. Could these men, once paragons of Roman honor, accept the duplicity necessary to infiltrate enemy ranks? The emotional toll was immense, creating a psychological battlefield as challenging as any physical one. Despite the internal conflicts, These shadow warriors often found themselves on missions that held the fate of entire regions in the balance. One moment, they were gathering whispers of an impending rebellion. The next, they were relaying secrets of enemy supply routes. Each mission demanded not only courage, but an extraordinary level of adaptability. Their work was shrouded in secrecy, ensuring that even their greatest contributions went unrecognized by the society they served. While generals praised the intelligence they provided, their names rarely echoed in the annals of Roman history. However, the risks were immense. Unlike the battlefield, where injury or death was often immediate, espionage exposed these men to slow-burning dangers. Discovery by the enemy could mean torture, execution, or worse, betrayal of the empire they had sworn to protect. For many, this life in the shadows was a double-edged sword, a chance to serve Rome again, but at a cost that few could fully anticipate. This paradox of service, remaining loyal while being invisible, shaped the lives of these operatives in profound ways. How did they endure the strain of balancing loyalty with anonymity? And how did Rome ensure these soldiers were prepared for the emotional and psychological demands of this unique role? These questions bring us to the heart of their transformation, the rigorous training that turned wounded warriors into the empire's most valuable spies. The transformation from soldier to spy was no simple task. Rome developed specialized training programs to prepare these wounded veterans for their new roles. These programs focused on teaching skills vastly different from those required in combat. Instead of wielding swords and shields, these men learned the art of blending in, creating convincing identities, and extracting information without arousing suspicion. Their instructors were often seasoned spies themselves, individuals who had spent years perfecting the craft of deception and survival in hostile territories. The training process started with mastering observation. These men were taught to notice the smallest details, facial expressions, regional dialects, and local customs. Such awareness was crucial for survival and success in enemy lands. They also learned how to fabricate backgrounds that made their presence believable. A former soldier with a limp might pose as a traveling merchant, weaving a story about an injury sustained during a robbery on the road. These narratives had to be airtight, as a single inconsistency could spell disaster. Their education extended beyond personal disguise. Trainees learned secret communication methods, such as codes and signals, that allowed them to send information back to Rome without being detected. They practiced escape techniques, ensuring that even if captured, they could evade long-term imprisonment or execution. Most impressively, the training pushed them to think strategically. Their missions required more than raw courage. They demanded careful planning and an ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. Despite the rigorous preparation, the transition to field work was fraught with peril. Many of these men had to navigate environments where trust was scarce, and every interaction carried the potential for exposure. The emotional toll was staggering, as they lived dual lives, constantly balancing their allegiance to Rome with the personas they had adopted. This balance wasn't just a skill, it became a survival instinct. But how did Rome ensure that the intelligence gathered by these operatives could be trusted and effectively utilized? Rome's reliance on wounded veterans for espionage was not merely a stopgap measure. It evolved into a sophisticated intelligence network that underpinned its military and political dominance. These operatives formed the backbone of an early information system, delivering insights that allowed generals and senators to anticipate threats and seize opportunities. But to ensure this system's effectiveness, Rome developed intricate processes for verifying and disseminating intelligence. Information gathered in the field was transported through a chain of trusted intermediaries. These messages often had to traverse hundreds of miles, crossing dangerous territories where interception by enemies was a constant threat. To counter this, spies were trained to encode sensitive details, hiding vital data within seemingly mundane correspondence. This system required not only cleverness, but an unshakable trust in every link of the chain. The impact of this network was profound. Insights from these operatives often determined the outcomes of military campaigns, giving Rome an edge in its quest for dominance. In regions where rebellion brewed, these spies identified ringleaders and dismantled plots before they could gain momentum. Their work, though invisible to the broader public, was instrumental in maintaining the empire's vast reach. Yet this reliance on covert operations also raised unsettling questions. Did Rome's dependence on espionage blur the lines between strategy and manipulation? And how did the empire's citizens feel about a system that thrived on secrecy and subterfuge? As we reflect on the legacy of this network, one final question remains. Was this a strength that ensured Rome's power, or a vulnerability that foreshadowed its eventual decline?